want to hide behind something. It's actually really scary not having anything to hide behind. I don't have to really talk about much now because I feel like you've all got something really good. So, yeah, so anyway, that's time. So, be blessed. I really don't know where to start. I feel like most of you know me pretty well. Even if you don't know me, you just know what Dad's talked about us kids all the time. We tend to make it into a lot of Dad's stories. So maybe it's a chance for me to set the record straight. Let you all know know the truth. I would never say that, not in front of everyone. So it's hard to figure out where to start, but we'll start right. My heritage, we'll start with that. So basically, I'm born and bred church. On Mum's side, I think we figured out it's four generations back or 5 generations back or something like that, have all been involved in some way in the church. On Dad's side, I believe it's quite a few generations. I don't know, I think Nen can probably tell us a bit better, but yeah, it's quite a bit. And I remember somewhere in my teens at a youth conference talking about the generational blessings, and that with each generation the blessing increases, and I can genuinely testify to that being like 4th or 5th generation of God on both sides, you know, there is a real blessing in that you kind of grow up in and it kind of becomes pretty normal. So I guess that's what I'm talking about tonight, is that becomes so normal you tend to lose sight of reality a little bit. You get so used to living Christianity that you forget to live the relationship. And that's really what my whole walk and everything with God's about. So I haven't had a specific defining moment. I was trying to figure out when I got saved, you know, the big conversion moment. And I don't actually have one. I have about 20. I think I've done it pretty much since I was 5, so yep. I remember praying with Dad when I was 5, so I didn't go to hell, because that's the first one. When you're in a Christian home, you don't want to go to hell, so you pray the prayer. I remember doing it nearly every Sunday at kids' church. You know, they do want to get saved. I'd be like, well, I don't know if I am, because I didn't know anything different than what I was doing, if that makes any sense to anyone. And about probably, 9 or 10, when we had a camp on out at the lake. I'm just picking one of the moments, because there's a lot. I don't know which one to really go with. But one of the defining moments was when I was about 9 or 10, I think, at the Nothing But Jesus camp. I assume that was about my age. We had the tent set up out at the scout camp, and we were doing a youth thing out there, and I was involved in the youth stuff purely because I did whatever Mum and Dad did. So, and I remember someone praying for me. I don't know who the preacher was that year. Actually, I think it was Zoran. Probably Zoran. I think it was the 3rd time I'd heard his testimony or something. He was, and I remember saying to him, I figured out that to be a Christian, I just had to love Jesus. And I didn't really know how you do that with not a person, you know. That was sort of the thing, because you hear, I knew the Bible really, really well because I grew up in kids' church. Mum and Dad ran a kids' church, so I had to memorise scriptures each week if I wanted to get a lolly the next week. And because I was the pastor's kid, you had to really know it, because they didn't give it to you if you were close. You know, you had to get it right, because otherwise it was favouritism. So I knew a lot of that sort of stuff, but the whole getting to actually love this Jesus. I remember asking Zoran to pray for me that I would learn how to love Jesus. That was just the thing. And I think it was Auntie Rhonda or someone with me, and I was lying on the ground there with my eyes shut, and I saw just gold everywhere. And I saw what started just as gold become streets of gold and houses of gold. And for me at that age, it was like, that's heaven. I've seen heaven. God's telling me I'm going to go there. I know this is it. I'm saved. I'm definitely saved. But thing is that when you live day to day just in a Christian home and prayer's a normal thing and the Bible's a normal thing and the way people talk about healings and salvation is a normal thing, you start to doubt a lot, and you can even talk yourself out of an experience like that. When I got up off the ground, I was that excited. I remember running to Auntie Rhonda, that's what it was. I ran to Auntie Rhonda and told her everything I'd seen, and I remember just being so excited about it for about a year. And then after that, like maybe years later, I remember having conversations with Mum where I've said, well, I've never experienced anything, Mum. I've never experienced. And she said, are you kidding me? What do you mean you've never experienced? What about this time and this time and this time? And I said to her, yeah, but the roof of the tent was yellow, so I probably just saw that through my eyes and thought that's what it was. And I actually managed to rationalise an experience just because you can't just live in the lifestyle, you have to live the relationship. So that was one of the things. At about 16, probably, I had a crossroad where it was, the decision came, I had a lot of stuff going on. You know, you're a teenager, you think that 16 I was too old to do what my parents wanted me to do and I was too young to do what I wanted to do. And I came to a real crossroads where, after a conversation with Dad, I was forced to make a decision where if I was going to do this because this is what my parents did, or if I was going to do this because this is what I truly believed was real. Do you actually believe in God, and do you actually believe in Jesus, and do you actually believe in this stuff, or are you just doing it because that's what your parents have always taught you and you're brainwashed? Because that's what the kids at school would talk about, that, you know, yeah, but you grew up in it, you're brainwashed, you're proper brainwashed. So I came to that point and I made the decision that I believed it. It was so ingrained in me that I couldn't deny that it was real when I really stopped and looked at it. And I made the decision that I'm not gonna lose all this. I had to cut a few ties with different people, which I hated, and things, but I made the decision that I was going to stick to it because this is what I believed. The problem is that once you make that decision, you have to follow through. And for me, I got so heartbroken at the things that the people I had to basically withdraw from and you know, to move away and to stick to what I believed. I got so heartbroken that I never followed through. And instead, I stopped and I thought about how I was feeling and the emotions going through my body and how hard it was to be a pastor's kid and everyone expects you to be perfect and blah, 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 and all the different lies that you tell yourself when you're really miserable. And so I stayed in church, but I hated it and I resented it. And I really resented the decision I made. And it was a really hard couple of years after that because I wasn't actually living what I chose. I wasn't trying to get to know Jesus better. I had lost the idea of being in love with Jesus. And I was just living the lifestyle. I was doing what I was meant to do. I was very involved in the church and in the music and in the kids' church. I think I was running the 3 to 5 year old Sunday school group, so I'm teaching 3 to 5 year olds it, and I barely believed it myself at that point. So, sorry, Dad. No, that was later. I was in my 20s when I did that. I'm still in my 20s, just sounded like I wasn't the way I said that. So at 17, I decided that I needed to do something more about this whole Christian thing, and if I was, you know, I'd made the decision and I'd do something about it. So I did a traineeship with Uralla, I think their name was, some group in Sydney anyway, and a part of that was to go over to do 2 mission trips overseas, one in China and one in India. They were the 2 places in the world I never wanted to visit, but they were the 2 places I got sent to. So we went to China and I worked in an orphanage for about a month, and Mum will testify to this, that I worked in that orphanage and those kids were just so gorgeous and some of the most beautiful little girls in there, and when I left, there was a young girl there that her dad, punishment over there is quite different to what it is over here. She had disobeyed her dad. She was about, I think, 12 maybe, so she might have been about 12, and she had disobeyed her dad, so her dad had dropped her off at the welfare centre and hadn't told her when he was coming to pick her up. And he basically disowned her and told her, when you've paid your time, I'll come and get you. She'd been there for 3 months when we got there, and she didn't know if her parents were ever coming back to get her. So we all came in, this group of people from Australia and Germany and America and England. There was a whole bunch of us from everywhere, and we've all come in and just spent this 3 weeks with her, where she's got to love us and know us, and she really was beautiful. She didn't speak a drop of English, but there was a real connection made just in playing with her and making things with her and everything. And then we left, and it was like, we're getting onto the bus. Sorry. Apparently it's still painful. And she was in tears because she knew we weren't coming back. They'd told her that we weren't coming back. And it broke my heart. Sorry. Who'd have thought I was this emotional? It broke my heart to watch her, to leave her there, to abandon her all over again. And I came back to Australia in a worse state than when I left. Poor mum. Sorry. Mum had to put up with me because I came home I was a bit of a horrible person when I got back. I was so heartbroken, and I saw so much stuff over there that was really unfair. And I came back to my little brother in a phase where he was snapping a skateboard a week, and they were like $70 a deck, and he was just like complaining that he didn't have the right kind of deck and all the rest of it. And I went off at Bradley over the fact that he was such a selfish little thing, and poor Brad. And I think me and Mum fought a lot that year because I just was so hard to live with. I tend not to I don't get depressed, I get angry, so I become really horrible to live with. There's no more biscuits. Oh, you'll live with it, darling. So for that year, I was pretty horrible, and Mum was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. But that's all right. I'm distracted now. Sorry. Oh, so nothing changed in me. I went through all that experience. I saw these kids, and nothing changed in me. I got heartbroken, and I just got angry, and nothing changed. I never took it and learnt from it. I just came home and took it out on my family, basically. Luckily, there was another trip in India that I went to, and that one was we were doing more. It was less work with children, and it was more of a prayer tour and looking at what my cousin is doing over there. She's been working over there with an unreached group called the Charons. So we spent a couple of weeks in orphanages there, but it was we only dropped in and played with them for like a day. There was no connections made or anything. But my prayer before I left was that on this trip I would find my salvation again. And by that I meant I would find my first love again. That back when I said I just need to figure out how to love Jesus. I just want to love him. I want to love him properly and everything. And that's what I wanted. And while I was over in India, I don't know how it was or how it happened, but just on the prayer tour going around and looking at all the different shrines and stuff and the oppression over there, instead of getting angry, something in me clicked. And I somehow, I don't even know how to explain it, but something dropped from my head to my heart all over again, and there was that first love reignited that Jesus is actually doing something here. I can see what's happening, with what my cousin was doing. It was, the way they were reaching these people. They'd had 2 salvations at that point, and they'd been working there for 10 years. And they were so excited about it. I was just like, you know what, we lose track of how special that is, and how wonderful it is to fall in love with Jesus. And these people didn't enter into a religion or an idea sort of because they don't know that. They entered into a relationship. They got introduced to Jesus. And it's kind of lucky for them really that they just got to be introduced to Jesus without the ideas of how you do church and how you do you know, how you're meant to pray and how you're meant to do this, and how they had like this really raw, beautiful love for a person that was willing to give them everything for nothing. Like, it was really amazing. So I came back from India a little bit better than I did from China, I think. Mum's nodding, so I must have. I have no idea what I've written here. It makes no sense to me now. So the expectations that were on me as a pastor's kid, or a minister's kid at that point, I don't think Dad was ordained at the start, but those expectations I came to see. At first, you know, it was always like this burden that they expect me to be this and that, and I remember me and Rach often getting together. Pat and Wendy's daughter, this is. Getting together and talking about how unfair it was that we were expected to be perfect because our parents were. That's all right, we thought you were perfect. I won't tell you what else we talked about. So the expectations are always a bad thing for some reason when we talked about them. But I came to realise that if somebody doesn't expect anything of you, you don't ever want to be anything. If no one has any... my uncle, when we went away, one of my uncles down in Canberra says to me, I had expectations on you as a mother, and you have met them. And that's his way of giving a compliment. That was a compliment, it just didn't sound like it. If you know him, it's a compliment. And Murray said, what did you expect from me? And he said, I didn't have any expectations on you. And it was like, ouch. So if an yeah, so we met them, easy done. So if people don't have expectations on you, you almost feel like you don't expect anything from me. Like, if that makes sense. So the expectations are a good thing, because not only did it force me to, not force me, but it encouraged me really to live up to what I could be and what people saw I could be. But it gave me that extra push that you sometimes need when you're a bit like, it's too hard. I just want to have a weekend off from all of this. You know, you didn't have that option, which in the end was a real support to me. So the expectations, and Murray, I talk about Murray now, but he, you know, I kind of half warned him about all this, that when he married me, you know, he'd come into leadership, and he was like, I don't want to be in leadership. I was like, yeah, well, it's kind of how it works, so you're going to have to. And I think in the first year we were married, I think he talked about it when he was speaking too, that the first year that we were married, he really discovered the weight of the ministry and what it was to have expectations on you all of a sudden. He said that he felt like God had a new thing for him to deal with every week, because God, essentially it was God that had the expectations of, this is my standard, I know you can meet them. So, you know, that invitation was always there. So Paul Murray, for the first year, he said, I've dealt with more in 1 year than I have in my entire life. But in 1 week, yeah. So that expectation actually wound up being a blessing. And it's actually a real blessing, because now when people look at me, because everyone knows, usually most people in town know Dad and Mum, so they can't help but associate me with the church. And in associating me with the church, they can't help but associate me with Christ. So without even, this is what I mean by the generational blessing, is that without anything I do, before I even say a word, I'm a witness. And I don't even have to say anything, purely because they know who my grandparents are, who my parents are. And I get to be that representation without even having to speak. And that's like, that's pretty amazing, being able to represent something other than just yourself, just by being. So there's that incredible blessing and privilege that we have. And, you know, through, what was I talking about earlier? Through, you know, my entire upbringing, this being my normal, this was my normal. You know, there was a couple of years there where I think we had a service almost every day because we were in the tent, we were travelling, you know. This was my normal. And so you have the moments of doubt, and you have the moments of, well, what's God and what's not God, and you see things that aren't God and you see things that are God. And, you know, there's always that. The enemy will use whatever he can to convince you that it's not real. And that doubt was the one thing that played on me. I never doubted that God was real. I never ever doubted that. I doubted my own salvation. It was one of those things that just, you do this every week. How do you know that you're even saved? You don't even believe what you're talking about right now. Girls would come to me at school about things, and I'd just, you know, without thinking, you'd just blah, blah, you'd tell them everything that, you know, this is what God says and this is blah, blah, blah. And I just knew it all, and it would just all come out without me even thinking. And the lie would sit in the back of your head that you don't even believe what you're saying. You're just saying it because you've always been told it. That's just what you've always been told. But your upbringing and your life and your heritage is not a mistake, and it's not coincidence. It's designed by God. You know, he says multiple times in there about knowing you before you were born and being wonderfully made and the plans and the purpose he has for you in Jeremiah. Like, all of it was in place for a reason. And I can honestly say that in having that inground in me, you know, the words and that this is not, that Bible inground in me, it's been the one thing that no matter what doubt rose up in me, it never could stick. Nothing could hold because of that. And I really truly believe that I had the right idea as a kid to continually be saying the salvation prayer. I really believe that was the right idea, that I continually want to fall in love with him again and again and again. Because otherwise you just get dry and you just live the life. But if you don't put effort into a relationship, it will die. And so that daily conversion has become my life now. That, you know, Dave Hogan says he gets saved again and again and again. You know, that resonates with me because it's, for me, it's so true. It's been again and again and again and again. And the only time doubt or anything like that has snuck in is when I haven't been putting an effort into my relationship with God and I haven't been loving on him. I don't really know how to wrap that up. Was that encouraging enough, Murray, or did I still focus on too much negative? Is that all right? I passed? So that's not how I wrap it up. I just check if I missed anything. No, but to finish it all off, I will say that the daily conversion and that blessing of, you know, even if you're the first in the generation, so you're the first person in your family to get saved, you then have the opportunity to leave the heritage for your kids. And they'll build on that. And I mean, I'm living proof of what it looks like when it gets passed down from generation to generation. And so it's not, it can start anywhere. And I think that's about it.